You're
recording.
Okay.
Keep going. You're on a flow. When you talk about
when we talk in the Torah about geula, redemption, it doesn't mean the theological sense, redeeming you because you've accepted the truth. It means removing restrictions that prevent you fulfilling your potential. And so Maimonides, Rambam, when he talks about what do we mean by messianic era, not an era focused on magic, but an era in which there's no shibud malchiot. And shibud malchiot means political oppression. When people are not preventing other people for political reasons, like bloody Putin, from being free and doing what they want to do, that's what we're looking for. Mm. And so the term geula literally means to remove, like a wheel rolling away nasty people.
So this is interesting that we're talking about
so
it because
what are the issues?
What is that?
What? The sound. It was the sound.
Oh.
Yeah. No, I want to ask you, so what are the issues you want to talk about?
There's no issue. I think it's actually combining the two, like unifying. I think what we want, what we're speaking about, what is the energy we want to create in this world is unity, that we're all one, right? Mm-hmm. So, and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so, and we are one.
We've been trying thousands of years and still not closer. That doesn't mean to say we shouldn't be trying the best we can.
So this is why Luke and I we're looking into the sounds. We're looking into the harmonies and the wisdom and the prayers. And so what there's this specific thing that I discovered today. Or it came to me, and it was about the sounds with the mantra. So I sing mantra, and I share like a Shiva mantra with the people, and so E and E resonates very much in the head, in the skull, in the head, in the top part of our body, and goes straight to the heart, and which is also the purpose of Shiva, is to destroy the ego, so to destroy the activity of the mind, so we can connect deeper into our hearts, which is beautiful. With sound, you can actually create that by chanting and with intention also. And then I discovered that in Kabbalah, in the prayers, with Shabbat, they do the Shema Israel, and they close the eyes. Mm-hmm. And so this is also the purpose of chanting for Shiva, is to have deeper inner seeing, to look inside. So I found it so interesting that the correlation between these sounds is very similar. Shema, Shiva, Israel. It resonates in the same parts of the body.
Also, the two elements of the Sfirot are the right to the left of the Mem and the Aleph, which is the mother sound, the Mem sound, sorry, the Mem sound and the Shin sound. The Shin, S sound, and the sound, they also are combined in the Shma.
So it's the left and the right of the tree, it's the masculine and the feminine.
And like the sense of balance. So in other words, the Aleph is the core, the second one, which you breathe in and out. Have the sh on one side and the on the other side, and these are called the three mothers within the Sfirot. And that's exactly the same thing with minor variations to what you're talking about.
Yeah, beautiful. I hadn't realized that. And why do they put the hands in front of the eyes?
Well, there are reasons. Reason number one is order. When you shut your eyes, you should see the black and white fire. And this is how you have to focus on reaching through to God, through that fire, through the black and white blur that exists. And so shutting your eyes, on the one hand, is taking you out of the material world into the spiritual world and removing distractions, just as, you know, silencing the chattering monkey, just as removing distraction, as you were talking about before. So it's precisely for that reason. The hands over have an additional, because when you put the hands over like that, you could do it like that, but sometimes, usually do it like that, you're bringing the 10 digits together. So you're bringing the sphirot together. So you're, in a sense, bringing in spiritual energy in order to complement the physicality of your body making the sounds.
Beautiful. And what did you mean by the fire? Because this element is also very much Shiva.
Yeah.
Also for Shiva, when they say when he opened his third eye, it was so bright, fire came out. People couldn't even look at him because it was too bright, his light when he opened this. So the fire element is also something that's mentioned there. So this is very, very interesting.
So in the Bible, Torah says that after Moses was speaking face to face with God, it was so bright that people were scared of him. So he had to put a mask on and he spoke to everybody else through the mask. So that's also the idea of the power of bright light coming through one's spiritual connection.
And what does it mean, Shema Israel?
Well, Shema literally means listen. Shema literally means listen, but it's more than that. It means pay attention. Anybody can listen, hear the sounds come in, but you've got to pay attention. You've got to take the sound and use it.
Beautiful. And Israel is the soul.
Israel is interesting. This is the name that was given to Jacob after he fought with the angel. So Jacob, according to the biblical story, is on his way back to meet his brother Esau. So when he last saw Esau, Esau was going to kill him. He hated him because he'd stolen his blessing. On his way back with all his family, he's coming back to meet Esau. Esau was coming to meet him with 400 men, and he's terrified that Esau's going to kill him. And so he's on the other side of the river from Esau. And the other side of the river from Esau, alone in the middle of the night, an angel grabs hold of him and starts fighting with him. And the question is, you know, what's he fighting with him for? And the answer simply really is, Jacob is scared like mad. He wants to escape and run away. And the angel's saying, stop, stand and fight. So they fight all night. And in the morning, he says to him, let me go. And the angel says, the angel says to him, let me go. And he says, no, I won't let you go until you give me a blessing. So the angel blesses him. And the angel says, your name is not going to be Jacob anymore. It's now going to be Yisrael, because it's made up of two words. Yis is to fight, and El is God. Again, the hard sound and the soft sound. And it says, because all your life you're going to struggle. Either you're going to struggle with human beings or you're going to struggle with God. Life is a challenge. And sometimes challenges come from humans, sometimes challenges come from God. You want to understand God. You're always going to have to fight. So life's never going to be easy. And that's where the name Israel comes from, fighting with God and man. And that then became the name applied to the Jewish people afterwards. Luke, you're looking very serious.
Well, I'm enjoying the dialogue because it's just really nice that I know versions of the story between Jacob and Esau, and then obviously there's a lot more to unravel. But I think it's really nice that Rachel, kind of, who is very much doing this exploration with me and is working. We're working on a retreat as well to share this work, and it's just nice to hear Rachel kind of go
I
through.
want to are radiating such wonderful energy. Just looking at you is
Well, it's just a mirror, Jeremy. It's always a reflection. It's beautiful to be just to have you share with us. It's so wonderful. So it's a blessing and a pleasure to be able to connect with you at any moment and have you share so openly and so truthfully with us. That's the magic. And it's always a kind of a process of unraveling these mysteries, this path I've been on for several years, and that Rachel and I are kind of exploring together through our relationship. So
it to me it's very interesting to see how it just so intuitively I felt it already. I was brought into Kabbalah, for a reason, and I work with sound for a reason, and this and specifically the mantra I started with, and now I'm exploring also the connections. And what is the history? Do you know? Because I've heard stories about Jesus, who was a Jew actually. He went to India and he traveled through India.
Ask
right?
Jeremy what his thoughts are. Did you think?
What, do you think there's
what's
a
what's your take on Jesus' story?
Because Sanskrit is probably more than 5,000 years old. The Hebrew.
Ask Jeremy to share.
Yeah, please. Any thoughts on this?
So which question specifically? Do you want to know Jesus' story, his relationship to India, his relationship to the wisdom of the Vedas?
The wisdom of the Vedas, the Kabbalah, the Jews.
Rachel's trying to piece together the connections, and maybe Jeremy, you can enlighten us.
Is there anything you know?
First of all, specifically with regard to Jesus, none of the historical records make sense. So it's the historical figure does not make sense for a whole lot of reasons I won't go into now. It doesn't. But the ideas do make sense. And the ideas basically all come from Judaism, which is what Jesus' figure was brought up in. But really, the Jesus that we know is the Dead Sea sects. I don't know if you've heard of the Dead Sea sects, or that, this came from the Dead Sea sects. But
can you give a bit of background to the Dead Sea sects for Rachel? Just give context. Wax lyrical.
Well, roughly speaking, 3,000 years ago, the Jews were divided into three different divisions. There was the division of the priests, which was called the Sadducees. There was a division of the average person, who was called the rabbis, Pharisees. And then there was a third group, who were called the Dead Sea sects, who believed that society was corrupt and we had to withdraw from society. And rather get those monastic traditions in Buddhism and Hinduism that remove from conventional society. And each one of them had their interpretation of Judaism. The Dead Sea sects were divided into different monastic groups. Some of them were groups that were, at my age, I'm going funny here, but I don't know what.
No, you're not.
Some were celibate and some were not celibate, but they lived around these Dead Sea sects and they were lost. The Roman in 70 virtually destroyed the Judean community. But at the same time as they destroyed the Jewish community, Jews were still, the biggest Jewish community was in Persia, was in the Orient. So most Jews were always Oriental, and they were the longest community forever until, unfortunately, Islam ended kicking them all out. So in that, the Dead Sea sects essentially were the mystics. They were the Kabbalists. And that was a very important tradition, which was adopted by the mainstream as well, but the mainstream still remains within society, whereas the Dead Sea sects withdrew from society. So everything that Christianity added on to Judaism basically came from the Dead Sea sects, from baptism onwards throughout. But there was always a link with the East. So, for example, the Bible says that when Abraham was dying, he divided up his children, those who were going to go west and those who were going to go east. And to those who were going to go east, he sent with them the secrets of the East. So according to this narrative, which is also part of the Kabbalistic narrative, because if you take some of the early Kabbalistic men, for example, there's a man called Abraham Abulafia, who lived 1,000 years ago in Spain. He reintroduced, he says, yoga, meditation, all these exercises that really, he said, were originally in Judaism, but had got lost over time. Because when the Romans got rid of the Dead Sea sects, their ways of meditating and their ways of exercising disappeared. So that, in a sense, is the source of Christian mysticism. But there's another point. It's part of our tradition to believe that mysticism is a universal language, like Sufism in Islam, as in India, as in Judaism. All mystics share certain common basic foundations. The difference is in the cultural way they express this. So an Indian will express it through Indian culture, a Christian through Christian culture, a Muslim through Muslim culture, and the Jew through Jewish culture. So Kabbalah, as we have it today, is the expression of this through the Jewish system. So it's through Shabbat instead of Sunday or instead of Friday. But these are superficial differences. The core experience or the core element is universal, which is why you find similar patterns in India, again, amongst the Sufis, amongst the Jews, and amongst some Christian mystics.
Yeah. So it was, did you say Abraham's children that one went to the east and the other went west?
That's right. So one became, if you like, the progenitor, the beginner of tradition, and the other the Indian mystical tradition.
And what did they take with them when it comes to the Jewish?
From the Jewish side, all these things, this idea of meditation. In other words, Judaism has a constitution, as all religions have their rules and regulations, constitution. So you have a Jewish constitution, which includes these other aspects, the mystical aspects. But those mystical aspects were spread around everywhere.
So those mystical aspects were like the prayers and the sounds, or the practices?
That's a very interesting question. Essentially, the practices and the sounds. But what is interesting is that although there's been a common Hebrew language and a common Hebrew constitution and Hebrew and Jewish sounds, much is universal. So that's why what you're talking about sounds, what I talk about sounds, are through the Shema, can resonate with the Indian tradition. It can resonate with the new Indians in America, so to speak, or the indigenous Indians. They also have sounds which are very important, resonate with the Indian sounds as well across the world. And similarly in South Africa and in Australia with the Aboriginals and the didgeridoo, there are also the other sounds that all part of a universal energy, which you would have thought would make it easy to tap into that, to get everybody together because we share so much. Yeah. But for political reason, we're all this country, this power, that power, we're all fighting with each other.
Yeah. It's like the sound Shalom, for example. It has the Om even inside, and the Sha again, which is a very universal sound. So this is there's just so much connection.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Now, we're going to resolve it. I don't know. That's why I'm looking to you to find the musical solution.
Do you know more people who are doing this work, or like finding the similarities or the connections?
There are people. I've heard there are people in Israel doing it, but I am so out of touch.
Oh.
I'm completely out of touch. There are people that I could ask to find out more about it if they know what's going on, but I personally don't. I'm living in my cocoon here in Manhattan. Haven't been out for 3 years.
You look very well, Jeremy.
You look good.
You look great.
A lot of energy.
A lot of glow. So the Dead Sea sex. You've awakened the passion in me, and this. I want to know more about Abraham's children and the practices that they took to the east. I think this is a beautiful segue to unraveling the kind of. But again, where are your sources? What are the sources? How have you?
On everything I base what's called Midrash. And Midrash, from the word drush, which means to teach and to explain, is a body of work, a massive body of work, from about 2,000 years ago, from before Christianity, of rabbinic interpretation. You can find it. For example, you've heard of the website Sefaria? Have you heard of the website?
Yeah.
I've mentioned it before.
Yeah.
Well, Sefaria have just posted a big chunk of Midrash on their website. A massive amount. It's like saying, where is it? It's in the Encyclopedia Britannica. So the Midrash is volume after volume after volume. Because remember, for thousands of years, Jews were denied secular education. They were denied access to universities and to colleges. So they put all their intellectual energy into these two texts, the Talmud and the Torah. And the Midrash is part of that Talmudic corpus. And there are different collections of Midrashim. But the main one, Midrash HaGadol, the big one, that is, say, about 2,000 years ago. Some people go on inventing new Midrashim all the time. I think you're probably inventing a new Midrash. One day you're going to write it down. It's going to be part of the corpus.
That would be wonderful. So, question. What comes up is with the Vedas, traditionally it goes back 6,000 years. So yeah. How then would have Abraham's children, if Abraham is 3,500 years ago, 3,500 was born 3,500 years ago, essentially? How could he have sent his children?
Because at that stage, they're not talking historiologically as we are. What came first? Their concepts of time were different. For example, Babylonia, they had 8 different calendars. They had a calendar based on seasons. They had a calendar based on years. They had a calendar based on the number 3, a calendar based on the number 7, and a calendar based on the number 4. So they had different calculations. So when you get a Midrash like that, the Midrash is saying, look, I'm not talking about this, who was first and who was second, and what was accurate and what was not. I'm talking about an idea of the interchange of ideas. I'm talking about an interchange of cultures, of one culture influencing the other. How and at what particular time is irrelevant. So the issue is not who came first, the issue is there was interconnection.
Yeah.
And so do we have more insights into the influences of Abraham's children? What were the core teachings? So you talk about the yogic practices being one, something that was previously kind of part of the Dead Sea sects.
Those are not mentioned specifically in the Torah.
Okay.
They are all, shall we say, part of the mystical tradition, which wasn't written down until much later. But they were part of a tradition that goes back to the beginning of the Bible, practically. So you have the idea of fire. Wherever you have fire appearing in the Bible, it's a metaphor for something. So Moses meets God at a burning bush.
Yeah.
Mount Sinai, fire everywhere. Elijah goes up to heaven in a chariot of fire. First chapter of Ezekiel, which is all about, is all to do with fire.
Which is
so for mysticism, it was always there. The specific exercises weren't written down until much later, which is why I mentioned the name of Abulafia, because he was the first guy to start getting writing. Because until that time, they were part of an oral tradition, a tradition that was not written down, but passed down. Which is why to this day, the secrets of Kabbalah in Judaism, you will not find written down anywhere. You could only learn them from a teacher who learned it from a previous teacher who learned it from a previous teacher. So whatever you read about Kabbalah, the Kabbalah Center, anything like that, that is a stage removed from the original.
Which is essentially what we do is how we connect, how we truly connect. And no one, that's something we have to experience. And it's not something that you can write down or teach. It's something you come into an experience. And that is why, and why you need that teacher is because what we often do is connect through the field of the teacher, the energy field. The teacher brings you into the love of that teacher to student, opens up a channel for which you're able to access.
Also the elements then, so because the fire is one element, which also when you stare into the fire and just keep staring, they say it opens your third eye as well. It opens your pineal gland. So it's very interesting that it's such a it's also connected to the destruction, at least from the Vedic perspective.
Yeah.
I don't know in Judaism if it's the same.
All these elements can either be positive or negative. Water, positive, or can drown you. Yeah, fire can burn you, it can warm you, protect you. So all these elements have a yin and a yang, and a negative side to them.
And what is shalom? What does it actually mean? The word shalom.
It basically, its root is to be complete. Shalem, shalom is to be complete. And you can only be complete when you are at rest and at ease. But it also is used in the book of Ruth as another way of describing God. Shalom is another way of describing God because you are total.
And isn't it interesting that because in the Vedas, they explain that it's the first sound when the universe was created. Om was the first sound, the first vibration. So first there was the vibration, one vibration, which then exploded into the universe. That vibration made the sound Om.
Yeah, and similarly,
Om is
the first name of God in the Bible is Elohim. El is up. Is what connects El with human beings through the sound.
The Mima, maybe that's what's.
Well, yeah, the mother of all things.
And okay, so something that keeps popping into my mind is Sufism, the mystical arm of Sufism. Have you studied the relationship between the mystical aspects of Sufism and the Kabbalistic traditions?
Be close, very, very close. You know, I'm just reading a history of the Ottoman Empire and the important relationship between Sufism, the contrast between Sufism and mainstream structural Islam, and on the other hand, its connection with Jewish mysticism. And so the Safed in the 17th, 16th century, which was the center of Jewish mysticism with Yitzhak Luria and others, there was a very, very strong Sufi presence there, and they were interconnecting with each other.
Sharing practices. Do you know how that? Do we have any? I didn't hear that. Sorry.
There were different as well, but again, this was kept oral because they wanted to keep their traditions amongst the faithful. They didn't want to start spreading it used or used against them, as very often it was. There was so much conflict within the Ottoman Empire between the different sects. But you know, when you hear, yeah, probably sure you have on YouTube, the Sufi dances and the Sufi humming and the Sufi chanting, it's all part of the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm conscious that we have 3 minutes here before our time remains, and my head's. How are you feeling? You feel full?
I feel not full. Yeah, I'm very happy to have this conversation. It's just beautiful.
I'm delighted to have had a conversation with you for the first time, because up to now it's only been seeing you in the background and hi, how are you? And I can't tell you how happy I am to see the two of you together. So thank you. You've made my day.
You made our day, Jeremy. Absolutely. We should do this more often. We should do this more often. We can come back to you with some more focused questions. You're a gold mine of wealth of information. So it's never feels never from our end, from my end anyway. It's never satisfactory, because you're like, I wish I could get all of Jeremy's, just like the bibliography, the encyclopedia of Jeremy's knowledge, just on paper somehow captured to share this.
Well, we have it here. I'm gonna listen to this recording again,
and then maybe if you've got some time
really
next week, we can all meet together again and we do this again, and we can go deeper into some subjects.
We've raised so many different subjects, so it's, you know, I can only have covered them superficially, so we'll have to carry on anyway. Take care. God bless.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.